Thank you. So over to you now, Andy. Luke, to give us an update.
Yeah, no, fine. So it won't surprise you that 80% of the tennis coaches in the UK are self-employed, with only 20% of the balance being directly employed. A strong club and coach relationship is an integral and success part of your club. So together you can drive participation and engagement and add value for your members and potential members. Coaches are an integral element of the success of your tennis club's operation and very much a strong asset of the club. So I've got a few questions to put to Luke today. So we'll start that off by the various types of coaching contracts, Luke. As I understand it, 3 by the LTA. So do you want to go through those, or shall I?
Yeah, happy to. I think the LTA sort of put across 3 coaching contracts, but the reality of my time working in Kent and around the country, really supporting coaches, is every venue is different. So there's 3 we're going to put forward here, but I think there's nuance to what happens at different venues. Different venues have to do what's right for them. So at the moment, I'm sitting at Bromley Tennis Centre, and we've got myself and a couple of members of the team employed by the venue. So the venue very much centrally organises the coaching programme, and the pros and cons of that will be that pro might be that the venue is the potential sort of upside in terms of the financial benefits of the programme, whereas the cons will be for lots of venues, it's whether you've got the time or the inclination to employ someone and take responsibility for the overall standard, continued running and development of that coaching programme. So I certainly know a few venues that go for that method, where the venue takes control over the coaching programme, often employs a coach to lead on the standard of the delivery and the management of the programme. The second is that sort of a venue looks to form a relationship with a coach who likely has their own self-employed business, but they're very much look to form a relationship with that coach, and that coach is the provider of coaching at that venue exclusively, or uses some satellite sites, but broadly they're focused on creating a community around that venue with themselves and a team of coaches that work under them. So the strength of that really would be a venue that's looking to build a community around what they're doing and put their trust in a coach and build a relationship with that coach, that they really become part of the fabric of that venue. Potential downside to that might be, as Andy said earlier, sometimes if you don't have that natural turnover over time and there's not a challenge to that individual, then do they lose focus and drive around the vision of the venue and what they're trying to create. And then the third would be to have an external provider. So the big examples of coaching providers nationally now would be organisations such as Inspire to Coach, Premier Tennis, Will to Win, All Stars. They are organisations, National Tennis Association, which would be a very big one at the moment. They're organisations that might tender for contracts with parks or set out by venues to be the provider of coaching at that venue. However, they won't necessarily, the people you'll be speaking to through that interview process won't be the people who are directly doing any of the coaching. They'll oversee from afar. The benefits there typically would be those organisations where they're slightly bigger, have more of a brand, what they're doing. So there's something which is very marketable to the local area. They'll have something that they stand for. The potential downside of going down that method will be, a bigger distance between the decision makers in that organisation and the coach at your venue, and potentially the coach at that venue not being as invested in the programme and the community around that venue because they feel as if they're working for a provider, not necessarily directly linked to the coaching venue. So those would be the 3, but we see loads of little differences and gaps in how they're done at different places. I've seen all manner of different ways that the coaching system is organised at different venues.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that going around to clubs that the retainer side of things doesn't seem to be much or as popular now. So as you say, the most common ones, tend to be some kind of outsourced coaching provider. But we do need to understand that the coaches, still have to make a reasonable amount of living wage to run a coaching program at the club. And there's always that healthy rub between sort of committee and coach, trying to find the healthy ground, so to speak, on what should be called allocation to having as I said, a reasonable income for the coaches.
Yeah, 100%. I do see the retainer less and less, and completely agree. There's probably some relationships out there where the coach gets a little more, and that somewhere the venue maybe tries to sort of push for a little bit more, and the coach feels as if there's not the incentive to develop their business within that organisation. So I think the starting point is an open conversation, isn't there? The venue committee, the organising decision-making committee need to understand, what they're comfortable with, be really open and honest with any coach coming into that situation, and find a ground where both sides feel that they can meet their objectives and goals through working together.
So what's an offer from the LTA or Kent tennis to clubs and venues to actually find a coach, Luke?
Yeah, so the most common route at the moment is that you can put any sort of accredited coach or any registered venue. You can go onto the LTA website and you can put an advert on their tennis coach listing page, and then coaches across the country, if they're looking for a new coaching role, can go onto that page and look to sort of use that as a portal to understand where they can apply for jobs. So as a typical, if I was looking for a new coach at Bromley Tennis Centre, we would put that in, goes on the LTA website. Any coach looking for a role can go onto there and come back to us. I think that's probably the most common method, but over the course of the last 4 to 5 years, it's probably the method which I've got the least belief and faith in. It's definitely something you do, because why wouldn't you? It's free, it's there, you're going to get some promotion and some advertising through that. But I think accepting the sort of status quo as that's what you do is probably not the right track for venues to go down.
Mm-hmm.
2 things I would say would be, one, to take a little bit of a lead from other industries, really, that most job adverts now come with a exciting promotional video or some social media posts around that role that create a bit of a buzz. Because what you don't want is the worst applicants applying. You want the best applicants applying. So it's not just about getting the advert out there. It's about making the job look and feel attractive. So often I see, better and improving now social media posts that might include some video footage about what it's like to be around the venue and create a little bit of interest in the role. But then overall, my biggest call to clubs really would be to grow from within if they're looking for a coach. So if you've got a coaching team at the moment, a coaching provider at the moment, and you're thinking, well, where might we be in X amount of years' time? It's who's perhaps that junior coach within the team who might be the next person to lead. And if you're thinking, actually, we've not got a junior person within the team who's assisting, who's helping out the venue, what are we doing to push and challenge the lead coach to have a conveyor belt of the 1 coaches coming through who are going to be the next person who leads at your venue? Because over my time coaching, we've brought in a lot of external coaches, and some buy in to the the atmosphere, the ethos of the venue, and others don't. I was at Shooters Hill for a long time. We had some coaches that come in that would, not necessarily want to stay, chat to members, be part of the fabric of the club. And then you'd have other coaches that would just get it. They'd buy into that. They'd want to stay for a social session. They'd want to play in a club tournament. They'd happily come along to a committee meeting if they were asked to. So I think understanding the ethos of the club comes often from within.
So basically, promoting within, you definitely recommend, which is good. What are you finding that most clubs do if they're promoting coaches in their club at the moment? What's the I think we briefly spoke on this outside this meeting, but the sort of percentages that the club and coaching provider and the actual coach themselves are prepared to sort of put in for the coaching development?
Yeah, again, I see it here a massive mix, you know, and the bookends of that would be coach pays for everything, go and get it done. And the other bookend of that would be the venue pays for everything with no, you know, feedback into the venue, or no certainty that they'll use that qualification to pay back in the venue for a certain period of time. I think it's a financial commitment that some venues will be able to make and others won't. So I think each venue will decide on a percentage if they are willing to support that coach financially. But I suppose my biggest advice on that front would be, if you're going to support a coach financially through qualifications, you know, is there something in there where that coach then gives back to the venue would be the key thing. And actually, I'm not averse. I think in lots of clubs we strike up informal relationships because we like working with people. And sometimes when you start to get too formal with a person-to-person relationship, it feels, you know, less like a fun tennis environment and more like a work environment. But my actual sort of feeling would be that you're helping young coaches develop by asking them to sign maybe a simple contract that we're going to fund you X amount and you're going to do this follow-up work, because it leads into what might go in the future, which is, one, you want coaches to be professional. You don't want coaches that turn up late, don't fill in registers, don't get their accreditation done on time, are scrambling around for a safeguarding course. That's the last thing you need. It's an absolute headache. But also, it helps the coach understand that later on down the road, there should be a contract of services in place where there are some, you know, things set out, some conditions that the venue will stick to and some conditions that the coach will stick to. And starting that relationship, that there is, you know, a signature, pen to paper about this is the way we treat each other, this is the way that the sort of the venue and coach operate is important.
I'd like to open up to the floor a bit. Is there any unusual ways that you've attracted a coach to your club? I know, John, we've spoke previously, and yours came from Indeed in the end, didn't it?
A bit of a background at Shooter. So we had a coach who was very, very successful for Layfield, tremendous administrator, tremendous teacher, not the best tennis player, but at the end of the day, if you're a teacher, that doesn't matter. He was with us a long time. Then during COVID, he left. And the reason he left actually was very interesting. He got to the point where the business had grown so much, he had to register for VAT, and he never really got to grips with that. And so in COVID, he decided enough was enough. And in fact, he moved away to Norfolk and set up his own little business in his back. He bought a house with a tennis court, and now he has his own PGAs in his own background. So that's a very interesting move away. But so we were left with making a fresh start. So at Shooters at the moment, we have 4 full-time coaches, all work for Tom, who is the head coach. Work for him, in other words, they get their work through his organisation, through his administration, etc. So full-time coaches. And I did a little look last week of what was actually going on. And those 4 coaches worked 40 hours plus each during the course of the week. That was doing groups and doing individuals. And I asked one of them what they were looking for to make in the course of a year. And the answer was between £40,000 and £50,000. Now, that I think is a benchmark for people to think about when they're looking to bring in a head coach. That's the sort of money that the head coaches are looking to make now, and quite right, in my opinion. They deserve that. If they're hardworking and providing for your local community, providing for your club, they deserve everything around that. So whatever structure you put in, you've got to allow that to happen. Because it's quite interesting at the moment. I'm getting clear signals from the LTA that the chief executive would like to go down a business model. Not that interested in voluntary clubs, to be quite honest, more interested in the business side. In other words, clubs becoming businesses and employing coaches. It's a model from Australia where it's fundamental there. Most of the clubs in urban areas are businesses. They're not run by volunteers. They're run by businessmen, and they run it for profit, and they make huge sums of money. And it could be the same in some of our urban areas as well, though I personally like the volunteer element to stay as it is. So we're fighting that from the
And John, just a quickie, sorry, John, where did you get Tom from? Was it from Indeed?
Right, Tom, so going back, yes, good question. Tom a bit of two things. So we went out to advert using the LTAs, as Luke said, and we got at the final cut-off of four people being interviewed. Two came through the LTA, and two came through Indeed. Get a lot of rubbish on Indeed, hairdressers, you name it, you get it. But at the same time, we picked up two really good candidates. Plus a bit of headhunting by myself. You know, you get to know around the country. So I asked somebody in the north who runs 5 different, a tennis provider providing for 5. Had they got anybody who they knew was coming to London and might be interested? And Tom, who we've got now, was one. So he got interviewed with somebody from one of the clubs in the inner London area, one from Essex, and one from somewhere in Surrey.
Yeah.
What was quite
then, John.
Sorry, Indeed. So can I just say that one key thing in making the appointment was before they started the appointment, the committee which was set up for interview, it didn't include me. One was an ex-head teacher, one was a secretary, one was a lecturer at university. So I think they knew what they were doing when employing people. But they decided what they wanted. They decided they wanted a community coach. Now that was important, Andy, because there were some candidates who were performance coaches and there were some candidates who were community coaches.
Yeah.
And in the end, it came between two of them. There was very little between the two of them, and they chose the community coach, who was in fact Tom, who came down from the north, from Whitby in northeast.
Cheers, John. Thanks very much. Is there anybody else that's managed to attract a coach by different forms at all?
Well, we at Y, I think we've been very, very lucky with our coaching. Years ago, back in probably about 1990, say, we just had one coach, which is Mike Bruce, who'd been coaching since about 1901, I think. Mike deserves a lot of credit because it was him that held tennis together in Ashford. As people may know, Ashford is a desert for tennis. And this was probably been one of the contributing factors why Y has been so successful, because all the clubs around Ashford have always been 2-court village clubs, nothing at all in Ashford itself. Now, with regard to our coaching, every time that we've improved our facilities, so our numbers have risen. And we've been so very, very lucky because we've got 3 excellent coaches, Mike Bruce and Tom Sampson, of course, who Luke would know very well, and Lawrence Harvey. And we've got Tom Carlton now doing the paddle coaching. Now, we try to keep things as simple and as informal as we possibly can at Y. And so we have no input at all with our coaches. We say, look, you are the coaches, you organise your own programs, people will come and pay you. And we charge them just towards electricity, mainly just £60 a month. That's all they're charged. We're not interested in making money because the standard of their coaching brought us new members, without a doubt.
And Graham, how did you find your coach originally, your head coach? How did you find him?
Well, Mike had been coaching before I came along. He was
right, okay.
Tom Sampson was a member.
Yes.
And we knew Lawrence Harvey from Bellaston, and he was only doing a few hours. And as we invited him. So,
well, I'm gonna push back to Luke now, if that's okay, so we can carry on drawing down on his experience and knowledge. But thanks for that input, Graham and John. Thank you. So the ideal interview process, Luke. What do you think that would look like? As in, would it be a good idea to have that person sort of coach in front of the committee so they could see maybe a junior coaching program, an adult coaching program? Any suggestions regarding that?
Yeah, I think the first thing the venue needs to do is decide on before you interview what is the vision, what do you want to create here. I think, as Graham said, Graham's got an idea of what they're trying to achieve, which is let the coaches go on, and the committee to step back. So I think first of all, you've got to decide on what do you want from your coaching provision before you even think about interviewing, because then you can form a little bit of a job description and decide on what you want that interview process to be. bigger venues now, and myself included, if I was, interviewing for a substantial role, I would be giving a bit of a brief and a vision of what I'd want the venue to achieve, and then I'd be asking for an off-court presentation and interview around that. And then I definitely see, every time we interview, I see coaches on court with at least 2 different sort of demographics of player. So typically I'll ask the coach to do an on-court interview of adults and a age group of younger players, to ensure they've got the communication skills to go through anyone in your venue and provide coaching for different ages and stages of players. The off-court interview part, I guess, is really dependent on venue, the size of the role, what their administrative skill is going to be part of it, because that will just vary from role to role. If you're bringing someone in as an on-court deliverer, then your off-court interview might be fairly short. At the end of the day, I've worked with a lot of coaches, and they all tell me they're punctual. They all tell me the right answers at an interview, and you get a feel for a person. And sometimes you're right, and sometimes you're wrong. I'm sure that's similar in any line of interviewing. I don't think anyone ever turns up to an interview saying that they turn up late and they look slovenly, right? So you're going to do some form of off-court interview dependent on the size of the role, and get a feel for that person. In terms of, you said support earlier in Kent Tennis, support from your coach development centre, which is us, Virtus. If you ever are interviewing someone and you feel as if there's not the expertise within a committee or a volunteer at your venue to understand what good looks like on the court, just get in touch. Certainly within my volunteer role within Kent Tennis, would be keen to support venues if they need a little bit of time to have someone put some eyes on a coach on court and see if the practices are up to date, modern, and sort of the standard that we'd like to see. Because for me, coach the game because we want to grow the game, and if you get the right coach, that's what will happen.
Fantastic. Yeah. So obviously interview process done. So probably next is getting the coach involved in sort of a development or a business plan of the club itself to make sure obviously that vision is aligned really. So every year at MEPM we do our development plan with the coach. So we do make sure that our vision is aligned with the coaches as well. So I know there's business plans, development plans that can be found in the LTA toolkit, as well as an Excel court utilisation tool as well. So probably worth getting that used only because that way you can work out exactly how much your courts are being utilised. So therefore can then have some idea of what the coach can and can't do on your court's peak and off-peak times, really.
Yeah, and I think from a coach's perspective, and I've spoke to so many coaches in a national perspective where things have gone wrong between the venue and the coach, and then coaches haven't got contracts in place and they feel as if a lot of their livelihood is pulled from underneath them. Again, I think you're doing a real favour to the coaching provider by sitting down, having a clear court allocation, having that court allocation in place, and sticking to it. Because I'm not sure, I'd probably ask Graham there. Graham, I'd be interested to know why there's a step back approach. Is there a clear allocation of when the courts can be used by coaches and which courts, or is it the coaches can have absolute sort of control of when they work?
Yes, they do have absolute control, but they're also very respectful, and we haven't had no issues at all with people complaining. That might be due to the fact that we have 5 courts, so they most they just have 2 courts. So there's always 3 courts available. So that probably, but going back to their earnings, I've never actually asked our coaches what they earn, but I have said.
Delete my multiple accounts back. You know what? I'm fed up.
Okay. Kiptu, can you put yourself on mute if that's okay, please? Sorry.
I have actually said to them, are you quite happy with everything? And they said yes, they are very happy. And our coaches, they don't just coach at Y, though that's their main. As you know, Tom coaches at Canterbury, and Mike coaches at Sellinge and Aldington, and large coaches at Featherstone. But one thing which does worry me slightly about the coaches is, I've said to them, do you have any sort of pension provision? The trouble is, trying to put down, okay, if you're on 50,000, we're saying, that's what I've hoped they're on. I don't know. I've never, never told me, but you need sort of to put £100 a week away, don't you, to get a decent pension? So I don't know whether it's something you sort of encourage, Luke, is that having a pension?
Tennis coaching pension provision. I think there's a market there, Luke.
It's a market I'm not getting into. Staying on, but yeah, 100%. It's just good advice to any self-employed person, isn't it, to manage their future, future savings and how they're gonna go along that route. Often with coaches, the current landscape more lends itself towards making sure that everyone has got accreditation, safeguarding, first aid, and that aspect of things. And I suppose the sort of bottom line of it would be, we'd ask coaches on their invoices to make sure it says, if the coach is invoicing a provider or a venue, that it needs to say you are responsible for paying your own tax and national insurance. So I think it's often something that coaching providers have sort of offered some light touch advice. But my bigger and broader advice to any self-employed coach would be, you need to go and establish a relationship with an accountant or someone that can offer you the proper financial advice. I think if head coaches and venues getting involved in that, unless you've got a real, financial background which says you are giving the correct advice, I would personally detach myself from the situation and say, go and talk to someone who knows a lot more than I do.
I think that needs to be put in the contract quite clearly as well, that they are responsible for their own tax in any coaching agreement as well. But good tip. So I mean, from a MEPM point of view, we only have 2 members of the committee that regularly meet with the coaching provider, and that works fairly well. I mean, we've got 12 on the committee. And some committee members obviously have a different vision of what the coaching provider should do. So having a regular 2 speak to the coach on a regular basis does work for us. So I can only recommend that those 2 do stick with those meetings that you have with your coaching provider. If you have the whole committee talking, then you do sometimes get different views, Chinese whispers, whatever. So try and stick with at least 2 on the committee, having regular meetings with your coaching provider, probably once a month. I would recommend. So again, on to accreditation then, Luke, if that's okay. So what can clubs, venues do to check on the coaches' accreditation? And then what can coaches do to make sure they are up to date?
So I mean, the simplest thing that a venue can do if they're checking on someone is, if you Google LTA find a coach, there's a service where anyone nationally can find a tennis coach, and to be on that page you need to be accredited. So if my accreditation lapses, then I'm not going to be on that LTA find a coach page. So anytime when a new coach, if someone says to me, we've got so and so who's going to come and cover at Bromley, the first thing I do is I type their name into LTA find a coach to ensure they're accredited, because we're absolutely not having someone coach at the venue who's not accredited and not insured to do so. So that would be the first port of call in terms of that. And then in terms of ensuring your coaches are up to date, I think it just depends on the size of your operation and how what you've got in terms of ability and time of your venues to be able to help manage that process. So I'm currently sitting in a larger organisation where we have a member of the team who tracks when coaches do their first aid, when coaches got their DBS, when coaches have got their safeguarding, so that we can tell them and say, right, you're 6 months out from your first aid lapsing. You need to go and get that done. For smaller venues, or there's not the time for volunteers within venues to do that, I think it's just a case of, these regular upkeep meetings that you want to have, which again might be, as Andy suggested, monthly, but it could be biannually if that's what's appropriate for your venue. You just always have that tabled as an item on the agenda as, safeguarding, essentially. you know, where are you in terms of safe to practice conditions within your venue? Do your coaches understand not just the fact that they need to have accreditation to be insured, they need to have safeguarding and first aid to be able to deliver safe practices? Do they understand who the welfare officer is at your venue? Because I can have a fair old guess that I could canvass an array of coaches. I'm not just talking about head coaches here. I'm talking about any coach at a venue who should have a good awareness of who the welfare officer is, and they might not know that. So to give you an idea of what happens on qualifications now, on level 1 and 2 qualifications, there is a small unit of learning put aside towards safeguarding, where, you know, even assistant coaches are encouraged to go back to their venues and understand who the welfare officer is, so that should they need to report anything in the future, they have that appropriate point of contact.
Yeah. So a brief explanation on the LTA coaching pathway, if that's okay, from sort of youth leaders all the way up to level 5, and just the difference on accredited plus as well, what that actually means.
Yeah, so LTA coaching pathway, I suppose the official pathway starts at level 1, but prior to that, there's a tennis leaders course. So a tennis leaders course is a 3-hour sort of bit of core training, and then a 2-hour supplementary unit, which is a really good introduction to get youngsters within your venue to be more committed to the program and committed to everything that happens at your venue. Because a tennis leaders course is about, I suppose the primary function of tennis leaders is to improve the ratios of on-court coaching, but a really program will sort of push young people into volunteer roles at your venue. So, for example, at Shooters Hill, we used to have a young lad who wrote a blog every week, which was sort of tennis results, and that would go out to our members. You know, we'd have young people that might help with, you know, social media or internet posts. So there's a skill set in young people, and the lifeblood of the future clubs is young people who have been exposed to volunteering and then have an idea that they would want to get into a volunteer role in the future. Then the formal qualification pathway starts at the LTA assistant course, which is the level 1. That course is all about helping a lead coach out when working with primarily players 8 and under, because those players are the players who might need the most help to be fed the balls and to develop the game so that they can start to play cooperatively with someone else. The level 2 course is now called the LTA instructor course, and coaches who qualify as instructors are trained to deliver quality group coaching across a variety of ages and stages of players. Coaches at the LTA instructor course are not given any formal training at all to work with players individually or to work with players who are, you know, competing regularly and playing at what in tennis is typically called more of a performance level. Not a massive fan of the word performance, but that would be the typical word we use in tennis. The level 3 course is what I would call your sort of jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife tennis coach, in that they are trained to deliver individual lessons, group lessons. They should be someone who can go into schools. They should be someone with a good understanding of inclusive tennis, so that they would be able to have a firm understanding that if you partnered with an organisation like DS Active and you wanted a Down syndrome session at your venue, then they should have an understanding of how to work with players with different needs to be adapted for within their sessions. Level 3 coaches are given an introduction to running their own business. So they should understand basics of tax, basics of tracking numbers, but that's far from the key objective on that course. The level 3 course is really about the core fundamentals of on-court coaching when working with players individually or working with larger group of players on the court. The instructor course really prepares coaches to work with 4 to 8 players and follow more of a sort of a formed lesson. Whereas a level 3 coach's expectation would be to work with, you know, any size number of players on the court that's deemed appropriate, and to be able to form a plan based around the individuals in front of them. There's level 4 and there's a level 5. Both of those are run in-house by the LTA. They're not run by coach development centres such as ourselves at Virtus. So the level 4 courses primarily are running at Nottingham at the moment. And that course is more aimed at called a senior coach role. So a coach who might be running a program, running their own business, or running a bigger aspect of a large program. Not been a level 5 master coach course since 2019. My course actually was the last one that ran, and it straddled COVID. We started before and finished after. The level 5 course is currently in redevelopment, so I'm currently speaking to the LTA, and discussions are going on about the level 5 course.
Fine. The tennis leaders, as I understand it, that can be coached by your head coach, or up to is it a level 3 can coach the tennis leaders?
Yeah, level 3 or above. So if you've got level 3, 4, or 5 coach, they can do it, or any trained teacher.
Yeah.
So a secondary school teacher could do that for you as well. If you've got a volunteer secondary school teacher within your venue, they can take that on. You apply for resources through the LTA website. It's very well resourced. So the person running this course has a leader workbook. All of the learners on the course have workbooks. They do some written work, and then the workbook takes them through what they're going to go and do practically on court as well. So there's no formal tutoring qualification required. It's laid out in front of you as the person running the course.
So at MEPM, we instructed our coach about 6 months ago to make sure that all our helpers were tennis leaders. And that's because they're all on the same playing field. They're getting LTA structure behind them. They're all being taught from the same book, so to speak. I think they get T-shirts after becoming a tennis leader.
T-shirts have now been pulled. No T-shirts.
Oh,
shocking.
Maybe
this is on a recording. Shocking decision.
It is. Yeah.
They don't get T-shirts.
Yeah. See, I did like the youth girls T-shirts, the Amazon Prime T-shirts. I've seen those recently. So, but yeah, no, it is disappointing if they haven't got the T-shirts. So get the club maybe to make those up. But it is nice that the helpers or the team leaders, the tennis leaders do have the same tops on. You know, they are young helpers as well, and it's just nice that they get chosen or picked out. You can see those differently than you can do the people or the juniors that are being coached, really. So that's good. And the Accredited Plus, Luke, have you spoken about that?
Yeah, okay. Accreditation Plus. So you've got two tiers of accreditation. Accreditation, not Accreditation Plus, so just accreditation is available to any coach from level 1 to 5. And you can apply for accreditation if you have a qualification, DBS, first aid, and safeguarding certificate. Accreditation is £25, and it will give your coach public liability insurance as the key aspect of accreditation, as long as some other benefits, which we probably don't need to go into too much here. The key thing you need to know is they get public liability insurance. Now, accreditation is the most ludicrous thing that coaches will ever moan about, ever. I've heard coaches moan about accreditation. If they pay for that public liability insurance separately, it's going to cost way more than £25. It's going to be nowhere near as good a package. So it's an absolute steal and a bargain. And more now that I work with schools when I go in will ask me for an ID, they'll ask me for DBS, but more and more switched on schools will ask me for my insurance. So that's your accreditation. Now your accreditation plus is £60, and it's available to coaches who are level 3, 4, or 5. And to be able to access accreditation plus, your coaches need 15 accreditation points per year. And accreditation points are gained by going to face-to-face CPD training at 1 point per hour, or you can also access informal learning points through the LTA. Informal learning points would be if the coach reads a book or listens to a podcast. There's various other ways to do it, and then writes a report on what they've learned from that. You can access 1 point per piece of informal learning that you do. Now, currently, the landscape of accreditation versus accreditation plus used to nationally be more accredited plus coaches than accredited coaches. Now in Kent, I think I saw on the dashboard when we last looked at it, there's 332 accredited coaches, of which around 120 are accredited plus. So it's actually a massive issue on a national scale that coaches are taking the path of least resistance, which is, I'm just going to get accredited. I'm not going to do my points and get accredited plus. And that the coaches then are not engaging with professional development. Now, if I'm an educator, I'm teaching kids how to play the game. I'm a big believer, if you are going to teach someone something, you better be learning something yourself. Because how can you stand there and deliver a fitness class if you're not going to be, willing to get involved and get stuck in, right? So if you're going to teach people something, you've got to go out there and educate yourself. So it's a big takeaway, really, that if you, as a venue, you do want your coaching team to be up to date with the most recent practices and continue to have an ethos of development self, pushing coaches towards that Accreditation Plus route. Now, in terms of why to be Accredited Plus versus accredited, first of all, it's a mark, it's a stamp that you are investing in yourself and developing yourself as a coach. But there is also an enhanced support package for Accredited Plus coaches, additional discounts from providers of sort of coaching resources, equipment, balls, and such on, and personal accident cover. So if coaches are injured, then there's some personal accident cover involved at that Accreditation Plus level.
Excellent. No, well done. So CPD, how many points, if you're accredited plus, how many points do they have to make each year on the CPD? 15
accreditation points,
right,
of which up to 6 can roll over. So if you've got 21 in 1 year, you'd start the next year at 6. But if you've got 81 in 1 year, you'd start the next year at 6. I believe that's still the case. Of which it's now stipulated that 4 of those points must be through face-to-face learning. So 11 of the points that coaches achieve towards their Accreditation Plus could be through online courses, webinars, and such. But 4 of those points must be through a face-to-face workshop. That could be going on the LTA website and looking at CPD courses in the area would be the most typical route to do that. For example, later this year, we'll have a Kent Coaches Forum, which is sort of LTA updates and new content from the LTA in a 4-hour course at Bromley. We'll have 32 spaces on that course, and each of the coaches that attend that course fully will receive 4 points towards their accreditation.
And as main contacts and chairs of your clubs, I would strongly look at, am I right in saying, Luke, looking at the disability coaching route with CPD? So we're all looking, or Kent Tennis will be asking most clubs to have a inclusion lead at their club, and realistically, we're asking our coaches also to open their doors, look outside their 4 walls on what's around them, and if it means learning disability coaching, then look at that on their CPD.
Yeah, and I've certainly heard horror stories of coaching providers that say to someone they can't access their program because of a disability or a special educational need. And where we are currently, I'm not going to put definite to this, but I think you're actually coming into some legal territory there about sort of not making someone welcome at your venue by saying they can't access something due to a learning disability or learning difficulty. So there is training available 3 times a year at Bromley. We'll run a disability awareness course, which is a 4-hour CPD where coaches can come and get a refresher on how they can treat. Basically, the course is all about treating the individual as a person in front of you. To give an example, autism, for example, has been a long misunderstood condition in coaching because you can't have any preconceived ideas about autism. Someone with autistic could be someone who is autistic could be hypersensitive to noise, or they could be hypo or lacking and want more of a sensation of touch and feel. So it's about coaching the person in front of you, asking the right questions, looking at the individual in front of you, and providing a service which is appropriate for them, which is really what we'd all ask for, right? I imagine if anyone in this call came to a coaching session and I was coaching the session, it might be a double session about finishing at the net, but actually the point that you need, Andy, to improve might be different to the point that Janice needs to improve. So as coaches, you should be adapting our coaching for the individual in front of them. Yeah. If you have a larger coaching team, or you want to engage with some local venues and you'd like some bespoke training for a cluster of venues, or specifically for a venue, you can always just get in touch.
Yeah. So as main contacts, if we can, to make sure, I mean, as Luke said, least resistance sometimes for our coaches. If we can just make sure that we're pushing our coaches along, where the clubs need to be for you know, now and the future, if that's okay. And that includes referees courses. You know, we're looking at the Kent roadmap at the moment. We're looking to try and increase more tournaments within Kent, and coaches will be a part of that. So if your coach hasn't done a referees course and you're not running tournaments at your club, then please look to do so. It's increasing the development of your juniors, your players. It's bringing other players to your club that might want to enter tournaments. So you're showcasing your club to other players around the county as well. So, you know, please look at, you know, suggesting referees courses for your coaches. Anything to say on that at all, Luke?
Can I just add something quickly here? It's this Disability Awareness Week this week, and the LTA are actually offering a shorter course, a 1 hour online course, free of charge this week to any coaches. It's only a 1 hour, so it'll give them 1 point. But I will be putting all the links that Andy and Luke are mentioning into a follow-up email. So don't worry about missing out on what Andy's and Luke are saying about find your coach link, find a course link. This information will be sent to you later today. That's just there. Okay then.
All right, thanks. Yeah, just a referees course for coaches, Luke. Do you think good idea? What's your thoughts on that?
I think any coach who's expanding their knowledge and horizons, it's never a bad idea. The more you understand about the landscape of tournaments and refereeing, the more you can better advise your players at your venue. I think if you're considering your coaches doing a referees course, before you promote that to your coaches, you've got to understand whether you've got the venue capacity to be able to then follow that up and put on some events and competition around that. So we massively would be, you know, as a county, we need a big drive in terms of more competition opportunities spread throughout the county. So if you do have space within your venue and you'd like to think that you could give some time, court time at the weekend towards competition, that's fantastic. But I wouldn't encourage a coach to go and do a referee course unless there's knowledge that you can then provide court allocations put on tournaments.
Court availability. No, good. From an insurance point of view, I've been asked this before, but we're all after our coaches to approach schools, go into schools to attract those students to our clubs. What's the insurance implications on that? If we do ask a coach to go into a school on the club's behalf, have you any idea on that at all, Luke?
Yeah, all the coaches who you're working with at your venue should be accredited. So if they're accredited, they've got their liability insurance. So my big recommendation would be absolutely don't work with coaches who don't have their accreditation, because you don't know that they're safe to practice. You may have a coach who has a sort of liability insurance outside of the LTA's accreditation system, but I would suggest they'll be few and far between because they'll be paying a lot more money for that. You know, it's much better to go onto the LTA's one because you'll be paying a lot less. Yes. And a venue, probably even if they saw a coach had external insurance, would still want to make sure that their safeguarding course and their first aid course are up to date so that they're safe to deliver. So it becomes a no-brainer to make sure you're accredited because it's the cheapest route of getting your insurance.
Excellent. And in your experience, how would you gauge a coach's success at a club? Is it purely down on numbers or retainment? Any sort of thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier around the vision of a venue. I think the venue sits down and decides what they want to be, and then that has a conversation with the coaching provider about how that vision is aligned. So a venue might decide that they want to be a massive part of the community and they want a massive participation program, in which case, you know, you might want to set some performance indicators around, you know, bums on seats, as it were. How many people are coming to coaching regularly at your venue? Whereas other venues may have a desire to see the next generation of competitive players come through their venue because they're mindful that their future teams, their North Kent teams, their Kent teams, are going to need the next generation to come in and support and develop a strong base of players, in which case it might be more about regularly competing juniors in LTA tournaments. Do we have players in county squads? Do we have players in county training? So I think it's deciding on what you want to achieve first. And what you might want to achieve as a venue is the ability to have a sort of a fairly stress-free life. And you might just want to decide that, right, once we've got the coaching provider in place, we want some really, really light touch objectives around ensuring it's safe to practice. And then we want them to be able to form their own decision of what they want their coaching program to be. And in which case, then you might just know what that is, so that if anyone asks, you've got that piece of information and you know what it's all about. In terms of what we do here at Bromley, and you use the word retention, we certainly track retention on a termly basis. We'll see how many players are in the program, how many choose to continue in the program, and we'll know on a coach by coach basis how many players they retained. So we can have a conversation with a coach and say that they've lost a lot of players from their 8 and under classes. We can then step in and provide some appropriate support so that they can deliver some more enjoyable classes for those youngsters and keep more people engaged in the game of tennis.
Great.
Just coming in, Luke, everything you said I agree with. I think it's so important, though, that we look to the future. And one of my concerns, one of my concerns has been the cost of getting coaching qualifications right from level 1. And, not everyone is wealthy. And I feel that it precludes a lot of people who may be struggling, who would like to be coaches. At Y, we offer a £100 grant for all levels. I know the Ashford District League, we offer £50. I know Tom Carton said, well, let's not do that until they get to level 2, because his view, it might be a valid view, is that a lot of, say, 15 and 16-year-olds go to level 1 just to get a qualification to make them, on their CV. But I do feel that we should be looking at the cost of somehow reducing the cost and making it more attractive for people to take that path.
Luke, I think there's some Kent tennis incentives at the moment, isn't there, that we've got out there? Did you want to briefly just mention any of those that might be available to the people on the call today?
Yeah, 100%. So there's certainly a move from Kent Tennis and from the LTA to try and diversify the workforce, which means to make sure people from low-income backgrounds, people with disabilities, or underrepresented ethnic groups have the opportunity to access the coaching pathway. So Kent Tennis has an EDI plan, basically equality, diversity, inclusion plan, to ensure that there are funds put aside that if someone who is looking to contribute to their venue could get in touch and we could decide on an appropriate amount of funding to give that person. That would certainly be dependent on what projects they want to get involved with. To your point there, Graham, if someone's looking to just do a qualification, probably not as interested in providing funding for that. Whereas if you said, oh, we've got this youngster at Y and actually they really want to support Tom in this area and they really want to get on the paddle court with Tom Carlton and they really want to be a part of the future of the fabric of the club, then that's a much more attractive proposition. In terms of what funding comes from the LTA, we're giving Sport England funding to try and meet goals with regards to increasing female coaches with a disability, coaches from an ethnically diverse background in the coaching workforce. We are given a very, very, very small amount of money about helping coaches from a low socioeconomic growth area, of which we're using that funding this year to work with the LTA Serves programme to provide a level 1 course for LTA Serves activators who are identified as important individuals within communities of low socioeconomic growth. So that's what we'll be doing specifically with that targeted funding. Personal viewpoint would be that as venues, if you're looking to support a coach financially through their qualifications, I would suggest committees have a strong think about how they support coaches through the level 2 LTA instructor qualification. That would be my biggest steer for venues, because at that point of becoming a level 2 coach, we're often talking about first aid, a DBS, as well as the course and a CPD that's attached to it and their assessment. So I think at that point, it really becomes a little bit steeper, and that's where venues could step in and perhaps offer some support around a first aid course or a DBS. Some of the things that venues should really be incentivized to make sure that their coaches are safe to practice. My personal viewpoint would be the level 3 course is an absolute bargain, because there are very few qualifications where in 6 months you can pay just over £1,000 and then, to a few people's point earlier, potentially earn £50,000 a year. And pay for that qualification back within a week, or so. That for me, when coaches talk about the cost of a level 3 course, I'm like, hang on, if you're working full time as a level 3 coach, you're paying back the cost of the qualification in a week or two. Whereas actually, to pay back, the typical journey of a level 2 coach is they won't be able to pay back that qualification as quickly, because often level 2 coaches are delivering on a more part-time basis, and group coaching as not necessarily supplementing with individual lessons.
Thanks, Luke.
Bear with it, Shane's going to kick in here.
Yeah.
Just sort of taking up what Graham's saying, in my previous role, I obviously ran a lot of leisure centres. And following the pandemic, we lost masses and masses of coaches across masses of sport, so from badminton, swimming and everything, and we had to look at a recovery plan for leisure as a whole. I think at one point they said that 50% of swimming teachers had left the industry because they had no money while the swimming pools were shut. So a big thing that we did was worked with the colleges who were doing sports courses and everything, and identified youngsters that wanted to get involved in whatever that sport was. We then worked with them and basically paid for their courses, but they then had to pay us back by coaching so many hours where we didn't then pay them. And it was really, really successful, because obviously they do have to fork out a lot of money. Rather like Luke was just saying, from a tennis point of view, if you're doing a swimming teacher, you also have to have your lifeguarding. So it wasn't just one thing, it was, lots of things and then everything else. And we really, really did succeed in doing that. We had people take up swimming teachers, we had people do basketball courses, we had people do cheerleading, not that I ever knew that was a sport, but it is. But so, yeah, with the clubs, I know that could sound that that's quite a lot of money and commitment, but actually, if you identify the right person who wants to be, and you're getting your succession plan, and as Luke said earlier, it is a good investment. And it may well be for, 10 weeks. I don't know what coaches get paid. Within 10 weeks, they've paid that back, and then they can start earning some money.
I think another, tip from my experience would be, if you are in a position to contribute financially to that coach's qualification, to understand whether the coach can pay up front or not. Because if the coach can pay up front, but you still want to contribute, I would suggest that venues give them that funding, that bursary, whatever the term is, on completion of the course, as opposed to upfront. Because we do have quite a number of programs that we've run in the past where we've tried to do the right thing and put the right initiative in place, but if it is at no cost to the individual, there's often a lack of buy-in. So as an example, we've run courses with universities to try and get primary school teachers their level 1 tennis coaching qualification, so that going into schools, teachers are better equipped to teach tennis within a school environment. So in our mind, we're going, brilliant, we're doing the right thing here, because this teacher might see X amount of kids over the next 20 years of their career, and if they feel confident to teach tennis, there's more tennis in schools. However, because they've not paid for the course, does the work always get completed? So on completion where possible, but try to understand if someone actually can't pay up front, then we make exceptions to that.
Cheers, Luke. So I just want to wrap this up by just saying that we are responsible to run our clubs with the coaches. Don't let your coaches run your clubs. You need to run your clubs with your coaches, hand in hand. There should be a nice, healthy rub with all our coaches, and your coaches are the best salesmen of your club. So on open days, get them front and centre. Don't get them on court necessarily coaching. Get them meeting and greeting people on open days. As I said, they are the best salespeople at your club. So I'd like to thank Luke very much in his input on this, and I'll hand you back over to Janice.
Hi, just before I go, Andy, just an extension and offer really of any time. If anyone does any follow-up questions about coaching, diversifying their workforce, how they can support coaches at the venue, any support with regards to coaching at their venue, Janice could follow up with my email.
Yeah, I can.
Beautiful. There you go.
Yeah.
Janice can follow up my email, and you can get in touch, or I'm at Bromley Tennis Centre. So the wonders of Google. You'll be able to hunt me down very quickly.
Thanks, Luke. Janice.
Thanks, Luke and Andy. It's a great session. Well done. Just yet, anyone got any good news stories they'd like to share us before we end? Anything happened at your club that you really want to push?
Well, I want to, Jess, I know you're going to send out things, but as you know, we're holding the Kent Tennis Open Day, which we're very pleased to be doing. That's going to be on Saturday, the 14th of September, and we've got it'll be from 1 o'clock until 5. There'll be a complimentary buffet served about 2. There'll be activities on all 5 courts. It's very interesting, Andy. You put me in touch with this organisation U3A, which I've never heard of, the University of Third Age, and I was amazed when I went on their website to find out how many activities they do. So I've invited them to perhaps participate in walking tennis at Ashford, but I haven't heard back yet. But that's no surprise. They say they're a bit slow. But on our open day, we'll also be having a chap called Etienne Pradia, who is a world famous magician. He practices magic for the royal family. He does the tennis at for Federer and everyone at the O2. There's possibility also we'll be having an exhibition paddle game involving Sam Billings, who, for cricket fans, he's Kent captain of cricket, and so that should be a good day. Just one other thing, and these are my own personal thoughts. They've got to go towards our AGM yet, but we at Y have been so lucky. I cannot believe how the club has developed over the years through just circumstances, I suppose. But we now, probably one of the best things we did was put our paddle court in, and that paddle court increased our membership by over 100, and it consequently sort of just over £10,000. And in order to get that paddle court, we had to have an interest-free loan from the LTA of £80,000, which was to be paid back at £10,000 a year over 8 years. By next May, we would have paid back that whole 80,000 within 5 years early. And our subscription levels now, my wife happens to be treasurer, and we've looked at all the figures, and our annual expenditure, including our sinking fund, which is about £20,000 a year, is 30,000 to 35,000, and our income is now 60,000. So this is my view, that I want Y Tennis Club to be a force for good. And by force for good, I mean to help other clubs and other organisations. And already this year, we've made 2 grants, one of £2,000 to our village hall, and another £1,000 to our Y Primary School for their arts venue. And I want us to be in a position whereby, and I've already suggested this, that perhaps each year we could make a £5,000 grant to Kent LTA for them to distribute as a one-off facility grant to a club in Kent, and for our residue to be helping other sports clubs and organisations within Y, Ashford, the Ashford District League, and others. So I might be talking a load of nonsense here. Our committee may say, no, we don't want that, but our fees are so low, and our whole business plan has been based on economy of scale, and it's worked. And we've got a very relaxed club with very few rules, and it's been so successful. I can't believe how lucky we've been. But anyway,
giving something back, Graham, is very honourable of you. So well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Anyway.
Thank you, Graham. So,
Right, Janice, if you wanna wrap up.
Yeah, I will. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a lovely summer break. And we look forward to welcoming you back on our Zooms in September. Our first meeting is going to be on Tuesday the 17th. We haven't finalised our discussion topics yet, but we do know that Stuart Parsons, the LTA regional safeguarding officer, is happy to attend our first meeting. So he'll be coming along to help guide you with any venue registration queries on safeguarding. So yeah, do join us. We will obviously be communicating all of this. There are a couple of ladies in the group who I don't know the names of. So if you are able to let me know who you are, that would be great. Either via email or now, whenever. So we've got one that's got MKK on there signing and one that's Samson. MKK?
That's
Hi.
me. Hi, I'm Tracy Carson. I'm the secretary at Bevanston Tennis Club.
Oh, Tracy.
You'll see my name on some emails, but I will email you afterwards.
Yeah.
To say
Okay,
it was
well
me.
done. Thank you for joining us, Tracy. And the other lady on the Samson SMX. Hiya.
Yeah, Celia Pascoe from Hive
Oh,
Tennis Club.
Celia. Oh, well done, Celia. Yeah, you had problems getting in. Well done for joining us, Celia. So yes, so all that leaves us to thank you again and have a good day. See you all in
Thank you.
September.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Ruth.
Bye.